Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this panel discussion. My name is Dr. Bed, and I am the program director at Morehouse School of Medicine online education program. And I welcome you all on behalf of Masters in Science and Biotechnology program. We have a great evening today because we are going to discuss a very interesting and very exciting topic, which is the role of artificial intelligence in the field of biotechnology, which is really both the fields are really fast growing, and how artificial intelligence is changing the life and the invention from 1950s is really amazing and breathtaking. So today that we have three special guests in our panelists, and before we start the session, I would like to introduce all our three guests. So I welcome all the panelists here. Kyla McClinton, she is a dynamic professional in the healthcare field, and she is specifically focused on public health, infectious disease research, and her current focus on biotechnology, CAR T cells in the clinical trials, and using the artificial intelligence, which will be very, very interesting to hear about her journey. And another panelist is Rakesh Sidkar, and he is from Emory Cancer Institute, and his research focus on the machine learning and artificial intelligence based methods in conjugation with multimodal imaging data for developing personalized clinical decision and support tools. Mary Perk, and she is the executive director at AI at Wharton University of Pennsylvania, and she leads the Artificial Intelligence Academic Research Center that focus on how AI tools can be utilized to solve the business problems, customer journeys, and discover the human impact of AI and smart technologies for the consumers, firms, and society. Very, very interesting prospect that Mary is bringing in the table today. We will start from Rakesh, and we'll just go through the introductions, and please provide your introduction related to a little bit about that, how your work is connected with artificial intelligence and what you guys are doing in your laboratory. Rakesh.
Thank you so much, Dr. Beat, for inviting me to this panel. Certainly a very exciting topic and very relevant to the kind of research uh, that's happening right now. My lab specifically focuses on leveraging AI with multimodal imaging data in the context of urologic cancers, particularly prostate and kidney cancers. So, what we're actually exploring is can we leverage the strengths of AI to identify imaging biomarkers from different radiographic imaging, from digitized pathology imaging, from genomics data, and can we use these biomarkers to address different clinical problems, particularly can we predict responders to therapies? Can we quantify population specific signatures so we can build personalized models and minimize health disparities, for instance, particularly in the context of prostate cancer, where African American men tend to be adversely impacted? And we're also trying to leverage these different data modalities to complement their strengths and build more targeted and more personalized biomarkers. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Rakesh, for the great introduction. Mary?
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Dr. Bid, for inviting me as well, especially to such an esteemed group in biotechnology. As Dr. Bid mentioned, I'm in charge of running the AI at Wharton Research Center in a business school. So we are not solving using AI to solve for cancer, but what we are using AI is how companies, as well as students and people, everyday consumers, are using AI to solve small problems, but very large problems as well. And so we do that through working with companies that bring their data sets to our students and faculty members to research fundamentally questions to solve for using many of these terms that you've heard, whether they're neural networks and large language models and modalities. But the most key thing that we work with is our data sets, as well as defining the questions to solve for. As we also work with other research centers around Wharton, so it's not just defined to marketing, but it's also within finance, supply chain, legal, and management. And as you all know, AI is touching every discipline, not just medicine. And some of the most important things that we are finding are three things. One, make sure you know what the questions are that you're trying to answer, that you can understand the data that you're ingesting into your models, and then what are you going to do with that answer? Because there are many smart people. We now have the computing power and we have the data. So it's very important to look forward once you have those answers, what you will be doing with that before you start on your journeys.
Thank you so much, Mary. Great introduction, and thanks for be here. And Kyla.
Hi, my name is Kayla. Again, thank you for having me on the panel. I currently primarily focus on CAR T cell clinical research, and we are kind of, trying to figure out the best ways to utilize CAR T and what areas is it the most helpful. And there is a battle within the CAR T cell therapy, like a race to the line, like who's going to produce the medication first that's going to work best first. So I'm just watching the race. I spent a lot of time working with AI to kind of see how we can make these treatments more efficient, like producing the treatments more efficient. How can we make them more scalable? And eventually, if we do have a product on market that is doing what it needs to do, how do we make it affordable? And AI will definitely be a key factor in that.
Thank you so much, Kayla. And we can see here that, just for bringing three experts from three different fields, that, like the utility of the AI in three different fields in a clinical trial, or either in a business prospect, either in a different cancer, that, like how the prediction and modality is there. It's like amazing that how artificial intelligence is useful in so many different ways. So when we talk about the artificial intelligence, it's basically that for our learner, that it's a machine's ability to perform some cognitive functions we usually associate with human minds. And the evolution of artificial intelligence, when we talk about that, is basically that, the science and engineering making intelligent machines. And then we move through machine learning, a major breakthrough of achieving AI, deep learning, and then generative AIs, and so on. So the it's kind of like progress is continuously going on. And if we think about the biotechnology, it is the fast growing industry, and there are so many things under this umbrella of biotechnology which we talk about. All our panelists are working in the field of biotechnology in a various different aspect. So if we talk about the AI, that AI is involved in the in for our building our life better, either it is with respect to food security, health and well-being, or clean water and energy, responsible for consumption, production, climate actions, and etc. And biotechnology itself has a so much data driven field, that there are so many aspects of in this field. Either it is a drug development, disease diagnostic, analysis of health plans, health monitoring, digital consultation, surgical treatment, managing medical data, personalized treatment, and medical treatment. So is all these things is basically is we are utilizing AI in all this field. And biotechnology, big data, and artificial intelligence has become the key factor for either we talk about the drug discovery, drug recycling, drug safety, functional structural genomics, proteomics, pharmacogenetics, and pharmacogenomics. And we are already using so much around the world about AI, already used in the field of biotechnology to make the things better and solve the problems in the field of drug discovery, safety, structural genomics, proteomics, metabolomics, pharmacology, pharmacogenetics, genomics, etc. That it's really, really fascinating to all of us to talk about the utility and talk about that what's the future holds for us. And biotechnology itself, as I said, that it's a really broad spectrum field. Either it is agriculture, biotechnology, where AI is helping us for the crop and soil monitoring, insect and plant disease, livestock health monitoring, intelligence spraying, etc. On the other hand, that AI can also help in the forest biotechnology by predictive modeling, disease and environmental monitoring, resource management, etc. And when actually it is coming to the medical biotechnology, it's really fascinating because we all are in the medical biotechnology where it can help the drug target identification, drug screening, image screening, predictive modeling, and personalized medicine, diagnostic of the disease prediction, and biomedical image analysis, and etc. So it's really fascinating field. So let's start the discussion for today's interesting topic. And first question that we are going to just talk about and see that, like what you guys perspective is, that how is AI currently being integrated in the field of biotechnology research and development, which I talk a little bit about that various different field, but I wanted to hear from our panelists, and we will start from Mary.
For me?
Yes. So in the biotechnology,
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, in terms of how artificial intelligence is being integrated, my other two panelists will be able to really probably answer that more clearly. But in general, AI, I think there's two ways in which AI is being utilized. One, in terms of the drug discovery or the cancer discovery, and accelerating the speed of which the different iterations that can be performed. So that undoubtedly is happening. But along with that, the scientists are also using AI in terms of how their processes, how they're redesigning the processes of research and the flow of that research. And so now we're seeing it being layered not only with going through the data and the data and keeping track of that, but then also the multitude of research that they can process. And within that, hopefully the other panelists could also answer how they see in the future this would actually impact the human capital of biotech research, the application of AI assistance within that research, and how they're going to have to document when an AI assistant is making some of these decisions within that research process. Also, I think the other thing is to understand if synthetic data might be used within these research projects and how that might accelerate it as well. I mean, those are what we would be doing in a business case. So I'm just applying that more generally for people to begin to think that it's not just accelerating the research, that how much research can go through, but just the overall processes that are going to fundamentally change within the field, and just even the format of labs, and how digital assistants or AI assistants will be coming into the labs.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you that, like what you mentioned, and it's definitely that, like a part that where AI driven techniques is going to transform the overall the field of biotechnology, specifically focus on that what you talk about, the database, which we are always using for the drug discovery, into a more efficient, cost effective, and accurate processes that will help to save a lot of time to faster the process. That's for sure. So Kayla, what's your thought about that? The question that, like what we are discussing, that how AI based, like the intelligence that, like currently integrated into the biotech research, and definitely your work is one of the example, I guess, that, is the best example that you can talk about.
I think, to feed off of Mary's point, a lot of the process and process flows. So when it comes to protocols, and how we're kind of addressing that, what we're expecting our patient response and things to look like, on that side has definitely been, a little bit more AI based, which kind of helps us really have a stronger understanding of how to set up a clinical trial and what patient groups would be most ideal for what medications to be tested, just kind of based off of data points. And then even looking into data points, if you're going to pull from a clinical trial and kind of review that data, see what's working, what's not working, it's definitely a lot more efficient to at least have AI double check, or to have AI do the first pass, right? So I've definitely been seeing a lot more of that going on.
Thank you so much, Kila, for your input. Rakesh, let's hear about that. Like, what's your thought about that? How the AI is kind of like transforming various different fields in in biotech, especially that the area you are working with.
Yeah, certainly. I think first I would say, adding on to Kayla's point, is you know uh, designing clinical trials. I think there is significant financial toxicity, so there's a lot of finances involved. So if we can preemptively identify which patients would respond to certain therapy versus who would not, I think that would be a lot of cost saving on the patients, on the healthcare institution itself. So in our lab, we're looking at several clinical trial retrospective data sets, and we're identifying using AI to identify biomarkers that are predictive of treatment response in patients. So preemptively, we're looking at biomarkers from the baseline before the administration of the treatment itself, which patients would respond versus who would not. And there's so much data that is available right now through the radiographic data, the pathology data, the electronic health records. All of these are available in a digital format. So and they're all being held together. So if you look at a lot of medical institutions, they're moving towards Epic, where all the different data modalities, the lab tests and diagnostic tests, are integrated together in one place. And with the power of GPUs and there's so much compute power that we have, uh, what we could do is we can learn these patterns from these the data sets from several years on, and then identify meaningful patterns which are associated with treatment response. So for in our lab, we have seen that patients who have a lot more twisted architecture of the cancer lesion itself is they tend to be poor responders to therapy, and they might need treatment intensification to start with. So not only toxicity but also give appropriate treatment strategies to patients. So that is one example of research, and certainly going forward, the goal would be to integrate these into clinical trials. So to demonstrate that AI has informed that certain patients are not really great responders, and can we validate them through a clinical trial. So we are at a stage where we could do that, and then going forward, we could potentially triage patients based off of AI itself. So those are some thoughts.
Amazing that I think that like that's such a good point that you guys mentioned. And overall that like I can summarize that like what is coming, the thoughts from all of you, that in the patient that like this prediction makes a lot of sense with respect to the safety of the patients, along with that like to reduce the time of the clinical trial and increase the success rates. So that's the three big, I think, that like outcome that we can definitely like take from this discussion. And the another point that like I wanted to discuss, that like I wanted to hear the thoughts from all the panelists, that like whenever the new challenge is coming, new technique is coming, new revolution is coming, there's always a advantage and disadvantage, or there are some ethical issues are there. And similarly with AI, ethical issues, fairness and trust is really a big topic to our discussion. And there's no question that like it's a really important topic, and especially related to any field, and especially here we are talking about AI for biotechnology. So there are a lot of questions that like it always comes in my mind. And it's always big discussions on the research paper, that how we can ensure that AI systems are designed and used in a way that are ethically and socially responsible, that respect fundamental human rights and values. Or how can we ensure that AI systems are fair and do not perpetuate or amplify existing biases? How can we ensure that AI systems are transparent so that they can be trusted by users and stakeholders? Or how can we ensure that AI systems are secure and do not expose individuals or organizations to risk or harms? Or there are more questions that like how we can ensure the development and deployment of AI system in inclusive and involves diverse perspective and voices. How can we address the ethical implication of these emerging technologies like AI, like so that like we can see that like how it is developing or implicating or affecting various different policies, regulations, and government frameworks, etc. So I wanted to hear that, about all these questions, that what I discussed, that it's a really big question. It's a really lot of points to think about. So Kayla, we will start from you. That what you think about the ethical aspect, the fairness of AI in future.
Um, I mean, I think it's like anything that's new, right? You kind of have to figure out how it fits into just like the culture of the world in general. I think one question that you asked that I wanted to touch on is, how do we kind of make sure that it's ethical, and non-biased, right? Like that's like our main, at least in my space in clinical trials, like you want the AI to be as non-biased as possible. And that's, in a space of you have to make sure that we're putting in the right amounts of data. I think, AI, like it doesn't have that like human touch to kind of think about the small variables that humans can kind of think about when they're presented with data. And so if you're just giving a bunch of data, it's really easy for AI to skew or to be biased to one side. So I think like that's like the main thing that really needs to be focused on is what data are we pulling and where are we pulling it from. I think following that, we are going to have to, as a government, as a society, there's going to have to be a growing like biotechnology specific ethics committee that's kind of checking, where you pulled your data from, how you pulled your data, and then like a double check system of like, okay, the AI, went through this and they did this, and this is like the points that we got from this, but then you're going to have to run it again and make sure that that system didn't have an error. So there's going to be a lot of double checking and things like that. I think the same questions were posed when CRISPR was put on the market, right? Like, how do we know that this is ethical? How are you going to use this? Are we allowed to just be cutting genes? Things like that. And there's going to be a lot of questions, and people are just going to have to be open. They're going to have to be honest, and making sure that the data is being double checked. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you so much, Kayla. I think that that's a really good point, that what you mentioned about, and give the example of CRISPR, that, because when COVID hits and all the new vaccines are coming, and we are using this new quote unquote technology, where we don't know that, it's amazing technology, we get Nobel Prize, and gene editing technology, one of the simplest, easiest editing technology, fascinating. But we don't know that, when we are using it, that what will be the future implication of this CRISPR-Cas when we are creating those vaccines. So, but we all learn by mistakes. We all learn by the processes when we are using it. So I think that that's the one way to see it. So thank you so much for your comment. And Rakesh, next, I think that I want to hear your perspective about the ethical aspect of AI, and what's your thought about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with what Kayla mentioned, that there needs to be guardrails in place. There needs to be, um, committees and societies which provide directions. And there's a lot of work happening. It's a very fast-paced field that just goes so fast. And we've recently seen the European Union provide guidelines for development of AI. Even President Biden has signed a law for ethical use of AI. So there are things happening, but then AI grows so fast. So I would like to answer this question from a different perspective. How do we ensure that at the stage of development of AI, we implement ethical considerations? So one I would say is have a lot of diversity in your data set itself. So at least for prostate cancer, I would say, so there's a lot of these nomograms and tests which are available, but these have been primarily designed on using, I think there are 20-year-old tests, and majority of patients are white. And what happens is that we haven't really accounted for minority populations, what specific phenotype they bring to the table. And then if you judge the risk of cancer or any disease based off of a rubric which is designed for a specific set of populations, it's not going to be translatable, and that leads to biases, that leads to lack of ethics, and what we just heard about, the human touch, right? So I think if this human doctor, he would understand that there's a lot more that goes beyond just the numbers itself. So I would say that there needs to be a lot of diversity in the data sets itself that you start with in building the AI models. And I think that is very, very important to have ethical use of AI. I think the other aspect I would also say is explainable AI. So a lot of these AI tools that are coming up. So previously, I mean, I'm a computer science graduate, so I think when I started my PhD, so this huge deep learning that is sort of synonymous with AI wasn't there. It was more hypothesis driven, very mathematical, um, mathematically driven hypotheses that we would start with. So, if a cancer grows in a certain direction, if there are certain patterns, then how can we use math and engineering to quantify that? Right now, it is just throw the data to the AI system. It's going to figure it out, and then you have a result. So it's coming up with a good result, but then what is it that is actually that the AI model is looking at? So a lot of my collaborators here at Emory have done a lot of studies on ethics and fairness, and they found very interestingly that there's several concerning things that came out through their research of ethics. So there was one model that was designed to detect COVID from chest X-rays, and what they found was when they looked at the explainable characteristics, that the model was not really learning the biology. It was looking at how those probes were, what pattern the probes were put in certain patients. And then in certain other study, they see that the model which was trained for COVID was also predictive of race. So you're doing you're looking at stuff that you're not supposed to be looking at. The IRB has not given you permission to do that, but the AI model is learning all these aspects which are not related to biology. So I think we need more explainable AI models, more biology and hypothesis driven AI models as well. And for sure, I think a lot has to happen on the regulatory and the law enforcement. And so I think there are a lot of discussions happening, but I hope to see some solid guidelines come out that can,
Thank you so much. Really good points, Rakesh. And I think that that's the really important point where at Morehouse School of Medicine that our focus and mission is towards the social equity. And I think that, like recently there are a lot of papers published that where they specifically focus on that, concerning the concern that, like discussing about the concern that in the clinical trial that there is a not much diverse populations are inclusive there, and which makes a big difference because we have to include all the different kind of like parameters and the human variations to see that how the response are happening. So that's a really, really important point, and thanks for bringing that point. Mary, that I wanted to hear your point, that what you think about the ethical aspect and fairness and trust about the AI, because like your institute is kind of doing a big work in that aspect, and I think that you guys are fully involved in that, and you are the director for that whole program. So I think that that there's a lot of things that we are expecting to hear from you, that how you guys are thinking and what's your thought process.
Yes, and just as a comment, all this research that is being done, right now, what researchers and investigators can do is clearly state that there is bias in the data. This was only done with the population in the southern United States that's, this type of demographic, so that people still can be informed and build on it. But that's for the investigators, the research investigators to comment on, but then for people who are using it to challenge them in a positive way. So all this is about, we put forth that everyone is responsible for contributing to how effective and how productive AI can be in our society, and everyone can participate. That is one of the cornerstones or the opportunities that society has with AI, and that's the gift that, if you want to call it a gift, that OpenAI was able to provide to the populations at large, that everyone can learn about this technology, and it's going to be a step change for everyone to participate in this global phenomenon. But related to ethics, One thing I want to comment on is I thought it was wonderful when Kayla talked about the diversity in the data, and Rakesh did as well. And I just made a small comment about that you need to ask about where that diversity is. But I think the other item is that there should be diversity within investigators and research labs. It really is important. And this also is within companies. It's just diversity of thought. So we need diversity of thought, and that will help alleviate some of the biases that would be inherently within the data. So that was one of the first points I wanted to make. And secondly, I think we can wait for government but government is going to be slow on these regulations. And I think within your labs, your enterprises, creating your own ethical AI councils. So start to address it within your enterprise or within your industry in that regard. And also that could help influence some of the regulation and be an example and best practice to follow. And finally, I really think that our society needs to think about teaching ethics all the way down into grade school, so that because our students, the future generations, we have to be very grounded in ethics, because that is going to be very important. Everyone's going to have potentially some seats at the table, and you never know when you are going to need to be that voice to talk about the ethics, the bias, or the cautionary points. And then lastly, I'd like to say it is moving very, very fast, and especially in biotech, I think it's very important to do a crawl, a walk. And I'm not sure if you ever really want to run with AI in biotech.
That's for sure. That's a really good point, because biotech has such a big impact on human life, and in each and every aspect, that I think that especially that in the patient care and healthcare, that it's such a big impact that we cannot do mistakes. So that's the important point. And I totally agree with you all that that the point that you guys mentioned, that it's really important, and especially Mary, that what you mentioned is that the education to raise the awareness about the AI, the ethical aspect, the fairness in the general public that who are using it, or those people who are designing it, developing it, and using it. So it's really important for them, because end of the day, that the emotional aspect and the realistic aspect, that where Rakesh was talking about, or Kila was talking about, the diversity and all this, the real data, that what is really fair and is really important for us to extract the data from that population of a mixed population rather than a separate population, is really critical for long-term implication of any kind of clinical trial, is really, really important. And when we talk about the advantages of AI, definitely we know that the system is really good, the technique is really good, that it is efficient. So it is giving us the efficiency, it is giving us the accuracy, it is giving us the precision, it is reducing the human errors. So that means overall, that what it is doing to us, it is decreasing the workload, increase the patient face time, increase the time on the critical cases. It's saving a lot of money for better monitoring. But on the other hand, I think that one thing that what we all agree is the lack of human touch, empathy, and emotional intelligence, that need to be always kind of need to be discussed and need to be aware by the people that who are using this technology. As well as that, I think that one of the big impact that it is going to do is we are losing a lot of jobs. And that's also one of the concern that which has been discussed a lot of time. And I don't know that what future holds for that, but definitely that is also one of the concern that we are seeing that. So now that's a really good discussion about the ethical consideration. And now that another question that what I wanted to discuss here is that what that we see that various different application of AI in so many different aspect of medical profession, or either clinical trials, or in the biotechnology, in the research, etc. So there's one of the important part is the drug discovery and drug development process. When we talk about the drug development process, it's really a really big process. Drug discovery is a really big process in biotech. So, and that includes the quality control also. That includes the pharmaceutical manufacturing, because automated manufacturing, personalized manufacturing is really big. But on the other hand, that when we look the drug discovery, we actually take it two different steps. And one is the design of the drug, and the second is the drug screening, that how we are screening the drugs. When we talk about the drug design, that is basically that we talk about the target protein structures, target protein interaction, drug interaction, etc. And when we talk about the drug screening, it's basically bioactivity prediction, toxicity prediction, or interaction, etc. So it's really drug development is a big process. So overall, that our next topic will be that to discuss is that the what AI's role in the drug discovery and drug development. So overall, that when I break down, then I see that AI is really useful in drug design, because it is helpful in predicting the 3D structure of the target protein, predicting the drug protein interaction, AI in determining the drug activity, etc. But also AI in polypharmacology, which is basically designing the biospecific drug molecules or multi-target drug molecules. And the third part of the AI in drug discovery is in chemical synthesis. That means AI in the prediction of the reaction yield, or either insights in the reaction mechanism, or the designing the synthetic molecules also, or AI in drug repurposing, where a lot of drugs that in the history we discovered for something else, and we didn't repurpose that because we identify its therapeutic target or the utility for a different disease, and prediction of the new therapeutic use. And AI in the drug screening is really, really critical, because prediction of the toxicity and bioactivity and prediction of identification and classification of target cells are really critical. So I would like to hear more from you guys as a field expert, that what you thought about that the role of AI in the drug discovery and development. And I think Rakesh, yours project is kind of like more related to that area, so we will start from you.
Well, I think I beg to differ. I don't have too much experience in the drug discovery process, but I'll just give maybe I think Kayla is best suited, and Mary can touch upon this much better than me. But I'll give my perspective. So, drug discovery, certainly, I think there is a lot more with AI. There's possibility to scale up the processes faster and identify toxicity. But where I would see there's an advantage is learning from retrospective data sets. So there are several failed trials as well that have happened, and there are ongoing trials as well. So I think integrating AI into the design of a clinical trial and looking at retrospective data from clinical trial that can help us to identify, what processes or what pathways are important to identify where the specific drugs can be targeted. So I think that is one way I can see where we can retrospectively analyze and identify responders and potential toxicity. But in the development process itself, I think I don't have too much knowledge, and I will defer it to my colleagues here.
Okay, thank you, Rakesh. I think that that's the important point, that what you mentioned, that it's really the prediction of because drug discovery is really a very complex the process, and finding out based on the existing data that what are the predictions for various different molecules, and what are the different predictions for their mechanistic aspect, that where if these are the novel molecules and new molecules make a big difference in the research, that in the safety aspect and saving a lot of time. But I'm really excited to hear about the Kayla's perspective, because she is working on one of the really critical a hot topic right now, the CAR T, and which is kind of my favorite subject. So Kayla, I wanted to hear more from you.
Yeah. I mean, I think like from Rakesh's point, there's definitely, the speed, right? The rate of which we can produce, different medicines. But I think like one thing to think about when it comes to just discovery is just like, for one, like the amount of time that you are not going to be spending in lab. Like you can, sometimes you're like sitting in lab and you're waiting around for an experiment to run to figure out what's going on, and you don't need to be there that whole time doing that. And a lot of that is going to become, AI's job, or like a biotech systems job, to be running this experiment 2 and 3 times, and making sure that it's right, instead of you having a person, doing it. But then moving away from that, we're getting into treatments that are more specialized towards patients, right? And if you're going to be pulling, data sets that have failed, like different clinical trials that have failed, we can kind of learn where we would already fail before we spend the money, right? And like a lot of these clinical trials, you're spending millions and millions of dollars, and then it doesn't work, and it was just a waste of time. And so kind of getting to the point of like how we will get to the solution that will work faster by eliminating the solutions that won't work. And then you kind of fall into this space of, manufacturing, right? And how fast can we get these reproduced? I know in like autologous treatments, right, those kind of take some time to get cells from patient, get cells to the facility, get cells altered, get cells back to patient. And if we can do that in more of a 2 to 3 day process instead of like a week to 2 weeks process, that's really time between like saving someone's life or not, and being able to like give someone personalized medicine or not. So yeah.
No, I think that's a really good point that what you mentioned, and I would like to hear from Mary, because I think you guys have a big institute, and definitely that like your work is not related with the drug discovery, but overall that the process and in the biotech to opening the new ventures in that aspect, that what you think that in that aspect, that how AI is help that to the new to the new scientists that who are kind of looking for to open the new ventures in that field, and opening a new companies, etc. That how you see that the AI is helpful in that aspect.
Yes, and I think both Rakesh and Kayla spoke about this in terms of the speed. That's one of the benefits that you have with the processes. But so with that, and when you had also mentioned, possibly some jobs might be going away. And so I think it's important to understand, I don't think anyone is going to lose a job per se. Their job is going to change for sure with AI. And this includes the scientist and the researcher. Everyone is going to need to broaden their skill set in what they touch across the pathways and the actual development of bringing a drug from initial idea to the marketplace where it's going to be provided to a patient. And so that's where AI is really going to play in. And you won't necessarily lose your job to an AI chatbot or an AI assistant, but you might lose or be displaced by an individual who knows how to use AI more efficiently, or an AI chatbot or an AI assistant, or the fact that you as a scientist are figuring out how to use an AI assistant or AI nurse within the process. That's adding that creativity, and you might advance further and bring that product to market faster. So I think it's really important that it's not just about efficiencies that AI is bringing. It's around the art of the possibility, and also expanding our own skill sets into more interesting things that we like to do. I think Kayla stated, waiting around in the lab for something to be completed. Well, now they're not waiting around in the lab because they maybe have an AI assistant that is monitoring that and will stop the test if it goes outside of the parameters. And Kayla has confidence in that, so she can be working on something else that's even more interesting or is possibly more reliable. So I think it's really important in any of these industries, but specifically in biotech, where there's just more skill sets that we all have to lean on, or you're expanding. Our swim lanes are getting maybe a bit wider in what we're doing, or we might have more teammates on as a relay team now, and it's not just one individual type of stroke that we're participating in that relay.
I think well said, Mary. That I think that this really, really great point that what you guys mentioned is that increasing the skill set is really important. Learning about the technology is really important, and using the technology in all in a specific aspect is really critical. So I think that that's really a great point. So now the another question that what I have, that it's really, really important, because when we talk about the personalized medicine and precision medicine, that we are kind of like developing a lot of stuff in that area, because as the human genome is already cracked down long time back, and now we have all this sequence that we already know. We all this so there are the targets. For example, when Rakesh worked on the prostate cancer patient, there is the androgen genes that which is responsible for that driving the that specific kind of cancer. So we know that what is driving force for that specific cancer. Same thing that with various different other cancers. CAR-T, they're not specifically that part, but again, that personalized medicine and precision medicines is really taking a lot of help from artificial intelligence to revolutionize the healthcare. So basically that when we talk about the precision medicine and methods, it's identify the phenotype of the patients with less common response of the treatment or unique healthcare needs. And it's really important because there are so many cases that where that it's kind of like unique, and it's we know that what kind of response is there. So Kayla, what do you think about that the correlation or the existence right now, that the use of artificial intelligence in personalized medicine or precision therapy?
I think it's going to be a place where there's a lot of questions still, because the personalizing medicine is not the easiest thing to do. And as much as you would just expect cells that come from your body to fix your body, sometimes there are genetic errors that are just going to occur. And so that's, it causes its own set of issues. But the issues are significantly reduced when you can use AI as like an extra brain cell, essentially. Like it just gives you a little bit more like brain power, a little bit more of like, okay, these are the questions I have. And then you're like, okay, but what do you think? Right. And if you're kind of pulling from something that's not as biased, and you're pulling from something that has a little bit more efficiency, like of looking at like 16,000 data points at one time and then giving you like a conclusion, it definitely makes things, as we were saying, more efficient. It makes them more scalable, and you can find a way to eliminate the failures and kind of just go for okay, these are high probability, these are mid probability, and you get to a solution a lot easier. I think that's going to help in the best way. And I think especially, in the cancer space, I mean, we saw it with COVID, right? Like if you were able to kind of figure out where COVID was coming from, what was happening, and to figure out what we've done before when we've been treating infectious disease and what worked, then you're able to produce a worldly amount of vaccines in a short amount of time. And the same thing will happen going forward once we figure out, how to actively produce a medication, and if it's working, it'll move in the same speed. So I think that's kind of how, like, where we're headed. We just have to do it ethically.
Yeah. No, I think that that's a really great point, that to having that data set and big data sets in a different categories and specific categories, that where there's a uniqueness to that, what we call this personalized medicine, precision medicine, makes a big difference, because after getting that data set and respond to or predict the response of those patients are really really helpful with the help of the AI. And Rakesh, I wanted to get your perspective with respect to prostate cancer patients, or in general, that like what's your thought about that precision medicine or personalized medicine and the use of AI?
Yeah, I think AI definitely, I think, plays a very unique and significant role in precision medicine, particularly in terms of multimodal integrations. So I think any cancer is it's multifactorial, and you know, a patient's genotype and a phenotype is expressed at different scales. So at the genomic scale, at the imaging scale, at the food habits, education. This it's multifactorial, and the way we can achieve precision medicine is to take important patterns or biomarkers from each of these different aspects, and that is where I think AI can play a significant role. So particularly for cancers, I think there's a lot of genes that have been isolated, which are overexpressed in certain populations, and more recently, polygenic risk scores and as such are being utilized to identify populations who are at risk. So although we're looking at self-identified race, but with more and more mixed race population growing up. So how do we where do we place them? So I think AI can help in quantifying the genetic makeup of a patient and then integrate that different parameters
Rakesh, you've been mute. Rakesh, you are in mute. Sorry.
can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
my speaker kind of just crashed. So where did I leave you guys?
So you are talking about the data set and the value of the data sets with respect to using the AI to predict the modeling, etc.
Yeah. So I think these multimodal integrations is what AI can help. This it's a very complicated problem, but then AI can identify specific patterns from each of these different modalities and help integrate and achieve precision medicine. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, Rakesh, for that input. I think that is really critical that like when we use the AI in the personalized medicine, because there are so many different specific genes for specific cancer that are responsible for that, and we are, like you said, that like that's the exact word that I always use. Is cancer is a polygenic and multifactorial disorder. So there are so many genes are responsible. There are so many factors are responsible, but accumulating the data of these factors and the genes together, and then after that like separate them in a different category, and then see that like what are the specific patient that who has that specific kind of gene expression, and what the data telling us that patient is going to respond is really a helpful for the clinicians to treat those patients. Mary, any
No,
add?
yeah, I'm just gonna add a quick comment because I'm sure you want to take a question from the audience. But from this discussion, I think it's just so important that we try to encourage people, if they're willing to do this, is to contribute their data, their genome, so that there can be more data out there to have a quicker identification of what what medicine would work. But people can only be confident in doing that if they know the institutions are going to protect their data and the type of good that would be happening. So example, like when you are an organ donor, people could be data donors, but we'd like them to be data donors now, not when, they pass. So I just think it's really important that we protect data, and we really do think about that crawl, walk. And as much as money and private equity and other investors want biotech to run, we have to be very careful about doing that for the future discoveries. So I'm sure there's some other questions that you might want to look at.
Yeah, amazing, Mary. I think that the correlation between the data donor and the kidney donor, that was the perfect example. I would say that like we can do that. So there were a couple of questions from the audiences. One question is that how can we prevent biases from inaccuracy predicting who may be eligible for a trial? Kayla, what do you think about that?
I think kind of feeding back on Mary's point a couple questions ago, I think, if you have a diverse range of PIs, you have a diverse range of patients, and you have a diverse range of where you're pulling your data from, that's the best way to do it. Like, you can't be pulling all of your data from just white men over the age of 35, right? Like, it needs to be, you're pulling data from people who are living in like harsh environmental conditions. You're pulling data from people who are living in optimal environmental conditions, and then everything in between, right? When you're looking at different data sets, and that'll give you the most accurate prediction of, what might be best for who, depending on what we know about them and what we've been able to pull.
And if I can just add, I think that's where sometimes we can ask governments to support companies to have more diverse data sets, whether that's, there's different programming or grants, but then also providing possibly some incentives for people to come forth and participate in the trials as well. So having that conversation is one thing, but potentially that's where the government might be able to support it by supporting, encouraging companies to do that and such.
I think it's such a great point that Mary, you mentioned, and Kayla, that you mentioned that, so encouraging people is one of the best thing. Asking the help from the government is another thing, and placing the policies for that moving forward. Really, really important, because I think that overall there's one more thing that which is always coming in the mind and discussions is that what are the risk factors for all of us, especially in the field of biotech, to using this big and giant data sets and using AI, that what risk we are seeing in long-term future. So I wanted to just close up the session with hearing that what are the risk factors we are seeing moving forward with using this amazing technology in our hands, with using a big and giant data sets to predict so many different useful things to create a better human life. That based on your experience, what risks that you guys are seeing? And we will start from Mary.
So I'm going to turn the question on its head, and because we hear so much of this, it is about risk. And there are bad actors out there, but if we could turn it around and say, how can we all provide assurances or insurances around the data? And that's by everyone participating where they feel comfortable, and for entities to provide promises around the data. So I think if I could turn around and say, we need assurances and insurances and encouragement for people to participate, but but companies and entities have to provide the safety around it. That would be the first thing. And the other thing is around the diversity of the data, the diversity of the participants and the investigators.
Thank you so much, Mary. Kayla, last closing remarks.
I agree with Mary. I definitely think that there need to be some insurances and some incentives given. But I think, much like anything, right, biotech right now is business, right? And I think the biggest risk that I'm looking at is companies or organizations trying to put their patents on things and, claim who's first, be pioneers, and they start trying to gatekeep their data to the extent that it's detrimental to everybody else, because everybody else can't help everybody else. I think that seems to be like one of the major things, as everybody's like in their race to who's going to push the CAR-T first, or who's going to, do what first. It's very like, okay, but once you do it, you're trying to gatekeep because you're trying to profit and you're trying to, stay the monopoly, right? I think that's what I'm seeing as far as like major risk goes. I think we have enough rules in place already to kind of start protecting the data. Like, we just need to like extend our HIPAA and, expand like some of those type of programs. But there's not many laws in place to stop people from just like monopolizing the biotech AI like space, and especially in healthcare. So I think, yeah, that's kind of where I stand.
Thank you so much, Kayla. It's an amazing point and a really good point. Rakesh, last closing remarks from you.
Right. I think my other concern is that AI is not magic. I think we should be aware of that. That AI is not the know all and end all. It's not like Google is not the answer to all your questions. So just as you have, whenever you have a medication, there's a side effects, and there's all those small notes, those small font text that comes in. What are the limitations and everything. So whenever you publish an AI, I think those limitations also have to be mentioned, that this is the particular data set under these conditions is what this AI model has been trained. It's not a magic. We just need to ask questions, probe questions, just as we discussed here, that there needs to be someone on the panel of clinical trial also asking all these difficult questions. And those rules and guidelines also need to be enforced by the government and lawmaking agencies to ensure that we have, ethical, fair AI going forward. I'll leave it
Thank
at
you
that.
so much. Thank you so much, Rakesh, for your last words. And I think that, to closing remarks from my end is that, what I'm hearing from all the panelists, that, and I always tell one thing, that magic word is that education is the one of the power for everything. And until unless that, any clinician know the disadvantage and the advantage of a drug, that he will be not able to efficiently and effectively use that tool. So it's the same thing for AI also. We all need to educate ourselves to understand the advantage and disadvantage, and how to effectively and efficiently use this powerful tool for the welfare of the human being. And it is an amazing tool, it is a wonderful tool, and it is growing. But like, we have to take time to like learn it, understand it, the advantages and disadvantages, and how to effectively utilize in the drug development field or in the field of biotechnology in various different aspects. So thank you so much for Kayla, Mary, and Rakesh. I really appreciate your time, and it's an honor to discuss this wonderful topic with you all, and it's been a wonderful time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you.
inviting us.
Thank you.